Howdy, team. Everyone, thank you for joining us on Cyber Judo tonight. Really appreciate it. I'm Christian Scott, our host, and I'm joined by our illustrious co-host, Travis DeForge here. As you guys can see, we also have two fantastic guests with us this evening, Michael Holman and Avery Vaughn. And tonight, we have a really fun session that is entitled Bringing Cybersecurity Hiring Out from the Firewall. And what this is a conversation to talk about the tips, the tricks, some of the top recommendations that not just myself and Travis might have, but also Avery and Michael when it comes to landing a career in cybersecurity. Tonight, we're going to be talking a little bit about both Avery and Michael's backgrounds in getting started and building their skill sets, them networking on social media, them having the opportunity to meet Travis and myself, and how actually they had the opportunity of joining our firm just recently here at Gotham Cybersecurity, where we do penetration testing and other red teaming services. We'll also have the opportunity of talking a little bit about the perspective of a hiring manager. So both Travis and myself have had the opportunity of interviewing a lot of fantastic candidates over the years when it comes to cybersecurity. And hopefully we can provide a little bit of insight and, the hundreds of resumes, thousands probably of resumes that we've gone through, several tens, if not hundreds of interviews that we've conducted over almost a decade and a half of time to give everyone else just a little bit more of a insight into preparing to build their career in cybersecurity or to upskill themselves and maybe transition their career from one area of cybersecurity into another. That being said, what I want to do is I'm going to pass it over to both Michael and Avery here in just a moment to talk a little bit about themselves, introduce themselves and their backgrounds. So that being said, Michael, I'm going to pass it over to you for a 2-minute introduction, a little bit about yourself.
Awesome. Thanks, Christian. Hey, everybody. My name is Michael. I came from the healthcare sector, was a phlebotomist about 6 years back, made the transition into cybersecurity successfully earlier last year in 2022. The way I kind of broke in, I went back to school, attained 2 associates in network infrastructure, cybersecurity, and went that route. Got a couple of certifications in A+, Security Plus. But my greatest skill set learning came from joining a CTF team, a collegiate team back in college, with Cyber Gladiators. Went around and did a bunch of different competitions. CTFs in particular are a great way to learn your skill set, especially if you're a tactile learner like myself. You have to be doing things. It's a nice supplement from the books. So I think my big advice there would be to make sure you're supplementing your learning if you're in school, if you're doing certifications, with some hands-on experience too, whether that be building labs or CTFs, like I did pretty much. After graduating, I joined a worldwide ranked team, Team Samurai. We go to DEF CON a bunch last 10 years doing that. So that's where I honed my skills. So
stupendous. Thank you for that quick breakdown there. Avery, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Hey guys. So my background is just a little bit different than Michael's. So it has not been a linear path to cybersecurity. My college degree is actually in fashion design with a specialization in intimate apparel. So for anyone who doesn't know what that is, that's lingerie. So that was the beginning part of my career. I lived in New York for quite a while doing that. Doing some bras and panties, worked for Fredericks Hollywood for a little bit. So I then came back down to Florida, and I spent the last 5 years teaching elementary students with autism who are nonverbal. And it's kind of an interesting way that I landed myself here. So when I began teaching, and I try to tell this story where it's not like super depressing or like a burden to hear, but basically because I taught kids with special needs, a lot of them were in the foster system, and I had a suspicion that some really awful things were happening to one of my students in their foster home, and I kind of accidentally found myself using OSINT just by not even knowing what it was, and passing off a package to law enforcement, and there was trafficking going on in the group home. So they were able to shut it down, etc. So here we are 5 years later, and this is kind of how I got here, was because I just kind of fell into it. But it's been a really good ride, and I'm so happy to be here.
Wow. So that was the initial elements, right, of you building like a cybersecurity skill set, was in the fact of trying to help somebody else, right, and collect some of the evidence and information about, that the underlying activities, and passing that off to the appropriate authorities. That's really helpful for all that insight. So Avery, Mike, you guys have very different backgrounds, but generally speaking, you both come from at least the initial starting point of individuals who were not career-based technology or cybersecurity professionals starting out when you're 15 years old, hacking on a computer, that kind of stuff, right? And I think that more than ever, a lot of individuals kind of relate to both of your backgrounds in the sense of somebody being, in their 20s, their 30s, even their 40s, where they're looking to make a move or transition into cybersecurity, and they're trying to kind of build out a career path and understand, where they can utilize their previous skills and expertise that they've built out in maybe other domains, other markets and industries, and reapply that into cyber. So that's really good to know. That being said, I think, Travis, even though everyone here at Cyber Judo who's watching knows you really well, because you and I tag team almost all of these sessions together, I think maybe a quick 2-minute breakdown about your background will be really helpful too. This way, as you and I talk about our perspectives, everyone understands where we're coming from,
Yeah, definitely. So like Avery, my undergrad had nothing to do with security at all. It wasn't intimate apparel, but my undergrad is actually in Mandarin Chinese.
Don't lie, Travis, okay?
Well, the minor was in intimate apparel, but the major was in Chinese. Actually, out of college, I joined the military. I was commissioned as a military intelligence officer. Spent about half my time in Europe working with U.S. Army Europe, NSA mission, that kind of a thing. The other half of the time spent over in California, not the nice part, Death Valley, doing a lot with technology and drones. And that got me sort of more interested into more of the hands-on technology thing. So I ended up getting a master's in IT management. I did my security plus, that sort of a thing. And in the last few months of my service, there's a really cool program called the Career Skills Program, where active duty service members can do an internship with a private company. So I reached out to Christian, who I'd known from many years ago, but hadn't been in touch with in probably 8 years. Just reconnecting with my network, so to speak, when I had 15 connections on LinkedIn back then, and was able to set up a internship with him. Came on as a information security associate, really doing a lot of report reviews for the pen testers, helping with the really sort of basic stuff like some OSINT, which intelligence work is what I was familiar with, social engineering, the things that don't take a lot of real technical skill. And then over time, I was able to add value by taking a lot of those tasks that didn't require the super engineer brain off of the engineers, and build my own skill set up as I went along.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that quick breakdown. For everyone else, and your edification, just a little bit about my background. So I am more of a conventional techie, born and bred techie. I was always someone who would like to fiddle with technology at a very young age. I had the opportunity of my brother building me a computer and gifting me a computer when I was really young. One of the first video games I ever played was SimCity. That got me really interested in programming, and I picked that up when I was about 13 or 14 and was really passionate about it. I said to myself, hey, I want to be the world's best programmer, and I really hate networking because subnetting is really, really complex. And so when I went out to the real world and I did all my interviews and all that kind of stuff, of course, my first job I landed was as a network administrator. And so from there, I built out the rest of my career, where apparently I had less passion, but I was apparently better at was the network administration. So building data centers and doing a lot with storage, compute, network infrastructure, and all that kind of stuff, more in a traditional landscape for healthcare technology organizations. And then when I came into the domain of cybersecurity, it was probably after about a solid 7 to 10 years in technology. And somebody has asked me one day, they said, hey, can you do a pen test for me? And I played with Kali Linux up to that point quite a bit, but I didn't like really know all the effort and hard work that went into penetration testing. But I Googled it and I was like, sure, yeah, I can do a pen test for you. I'll do a pen test, fake it till you make it type of style. And lo and behold, I did the pen test and all of that, and they're like, "This is the best pen test report I've ever seen." And I was like, "Are you certain? Like, I think you've been getting really bad pen test reports or something like that." And then kind of the rest of this news in regards to working with my business partner Blake Shalem, who had founded Gotham Security and growing that organization together. So that all being said, jumping right in here to some fantastic questions that we have. I want to understand, Mike, one of the things initially speaking with you that really jumped out in our Cyber Judo session. So that's how, like, the first time we got the opportunity to meet was your passion. And so I would love to hear a little bit more about, like, the transition from healthcare into cybersecurity. What was the thing that, like, really sparked your interest or passion to, like, jump into it?
So for me, I did have a background in tech. I've built over 45 different PCs in my time, whether it be thick, thin, for family gaming PCs, Word, all sorts of different technology throughout my time. So coming through, I wasn't completely unlearned to the fact. I just was like a hardware guy living in a software world, right? Like didn't understand the nuances of how to put it all together. So back when I became injured, unfortunately, I had a stenosis in my neck and I lost feeling in my little part of my finger and thumb, so I could no longer draw blood safely. So I made the decision to go back to school. And I did see somebody in the chat, Venetia McRae. Is it possible to break into the field through just gaining certification and not going back to school? That is definitely a possibility. And knowing what I know now, I think it's about the passion and the self-study. A lot of the college courses, they were great, right? But it teaches you all this book theory, and I'm not knocking that. That's a great way to get into it. But you have to make sure that you really, truly love it, right? And you want to supplement it, like I said earlier, with building labs, with CTFs, things of that nature to go through it. And you can absolutely get here with just certifications and no college. It's been done 1,000 times before on LinkedIn. I'm sure you've seen the stories. It is true. So if I can go back and tell myself one thing, that would be to make sure that I'm doing a lot more certification work and a lot more self-study.
So that's really great that you note that. And one of the things that just like piqued my ears there, and I'm going to drop some more fantastic information for everybody in our chat in a moment. But so we had a whole Cyber Judo session team where we did building a home cybersecurity lab. And I saw another fantastic question that actually just came in about, somebody saying, hey, I work currently in cybersecurity sales. What's the best way to start transitioning and building a technical skill set? Honestly, for if you're new to cybersecurity or you're trying to upskill yourself or you're just like trying to stay on the bleeding edge, you got to have a home lab. You got to have a home lab and own cybersecurity if you're trying to do the technical stuff, right? There's so many other aspects to cybersecurity that are not technical as well that we're going to get into and talk about in a moment. But certainly, if somebody is going to be going more of a conventional route of, doing threat intelligence work, doing blue team security architecture work, or red teaming work with like penetration testing and all that, having a lab is going to really, help you effectively build that skill set. Avery, when we first had the opportunity of meeting, it was actually through, I think, your LinkedIn, and you did a bunch of the illustrations. So like, basically, as you were studying, you were like taking your notes and like turning it into this like really creative, like interesting doodle art. And it kind of became like its own little like mini viral cheat sheet series and all that kind of stuff that people were following. What motivated you to like initially start creating that type of content when you were getting started in cybersecurity?
So the first thing I want to call out about certifications is I'm going to tell you guys a secret. I don't have one, but I would not have gotten this job had I not worked my ass off studying for it. And all the cheat sheets and study sheets that I made for the CEH, that I missed it by 7 points, and I took it a week before I started my job at Gotham Security. But anybody out there who's intimidated by the certifications, etc., everyone's situation is unique to their own. But like I said, just a little tip for you. I don't have one, so don't feel like if you don't pass your certification on the first try, or is this the right one or not. What just happened here?
I certainly know what you're talking about in the sense of at the end of the day, following a certification path to gain expertise and experience is really important. The paper is just an additional benefit, right? And Travis, I know one of the things that you did a fantastic job creating, and you'll post every now and then, kind of goes viral with folks, gets like 500 interactions, 700 interactions, that kind of stuff, is this really cool security engineer skill tree certification recommendations. I know it's a little bit more pen tester centric and all that, but generally one of the things that we always like to remind folks is that like that's a mean for having a structured plan of learning, but it is all about the actual learning, not the paper. And to that, I mean, Travis, you've had the opportunity of interacting with a lot of people who are getting started in cybersecurity and talking with them on LinkedIn all the time. What do you think are some of the most like common misconceptions that you encounter about people thinking about like the domain of working in cybersecurity?
Yeah, it's one of the two is either you have to have the degree or you have to have one of the big name certifications, right? You think of the GPEN, the OSCP, or the CISSP. Right. All of those are great. Yes, they're on a bazillion different job postings as would love to have it. And that's true. If you have the opportunity to, to take those and maybe someone else is paying for it, maybe your employer, not yourself, because they're really expensive, that's great. But what's more important, just like what Avery was saying, was the skills and the expertise and showing the dedication of training up for those things, right? Like there's only one reason to take a certification test, right? That's to show validation of your skill set. That's it. That's all it does. I mean, I've got some on my wall. Nobody cares. My 2-year-old daughter points at it once in a while and knocks it over. That's it. But what it is it's a way to demonstrate without someone having to talk to you, what you kind of know, right? So that's why it's useful for, hiring managers at a glance. But when you talk to a hiring manager like Christian's my boss. Christian really doesn't care if I get the certification or not. It's the training that goes up into it. And I just failed a certification a couple weeks ago on an Azure test. It was way harder than I thought it was. I'm not bummed about that. I'm not like, running around my hair on fire because I feel like it's going to get me in trouble. I didn't pass it. I learned so much more about Azure than I knew before I took the test, just getting ready for it the first time, that it was worth it with the paper or without it. And so once you can get yourself a foot in the door to talk to somebody, and you can have that chance to demonstrate that you understand, the lexicon of security, that you understand the fundamentals and what it takes to do the research that it will take for whichever area of security that you're going into, that's where you have the opportunity to shine. And whether you have the paper or not, you need to be able to demonstrate it. And, even if you got the paper, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be able to make the hiring manager or make your future boss, your future coworkers confident in your skill set to do so. I tell you, like I took Pen Test Plus when I had 6 months of pen testing experience. I don't know how I passed it. I got a great score on it. But the pen tester I am now compared to when I took that test, night and day difference.
Yeah. Yeah. The irony to what you're noting and to Avery's point as well is some of the people that the best cybersecurity people that I know sometimes are the folks who have either like very few certifications or like no certifications. Like, my brother Shane, absolute genius when it comes to reverse engineering, mobile applications, thick client applications, you name it, right? And tearing that stuff apart, but like not a certification to his name, I happen to be in a privileged position where I get to as our chief information security officer and chief operations officer interface with so many awesome global CISOs and all that kind of stuff, and I have no conventional cybersecurity certifications to my name. I read the books and I learn the content and whatnot, but it's not the paper, and it's so certainly that the passion's a huge element to that. Holman, a little bit about your CTF background here. So we had Ryan Johnson, who's been previously on here hosting Cyber Judo with us. So Ryan, fantastic to have you join us tonight. He said, Mike, can you share a little bit more about your CTF journey in particular? How did it help you get started? I know it's an avenue many get recommended when starting out. So that being said, do you have any particular tips and tricks and a more specific breakdown about CTF stuff for new folks?
Absolutely. So if you're looking to get into it for new folks, what I ended up doing was something called NCL, and that's the National Cyber League. And if you just look at NCL CTF, and it's they say it's for students that you need an EDU address. That is not true. You can go in. You will be paired with high schoolers, with some freshman college, things of that nature. But if you're a beginner, that's theoretically where you kind of belong, right? So it's not a bad thing to get started in that. There's another one called PICO CTF that is up 24/7. You can go around and sign up for that as well. That's PICO CTF, and that's another good place to gain some skill set with it. A lot of it is what they call Jeopardy style, right? And I think in the future we're going to talk about CTF some more, but for now, what it is there's different categories like reverse engineering, there's binary exploitation, there's penetration testing, there's rooting, there's pwning, all these things, right? And then there's also like a trivia section for like new people, so you don't feel like it's, oh, I don't know what I'm doing or yada yada yada. CTF communities are amazing. CTF time is a good place to get started. Sign up. You can find a team that's a beginner friendly team, maybe get invited and start building some networking skills in that aspect with CTFs. I did mention, I think we are going to talk about CTFs down the road, but as far as starting off, NCL's great, PICO's great.
Yeah, I was about to say, I've been riding your butt and Dennis's butt about teach me about CTFs. I've not again, huge like thing that's like really strange about me is like done hundreds of pen testing engagements, right? Not I'm probably in the territory about 450 pen tests over my career so far, right? Never done a CTF, never been interested in doing a CTF until talking to you guys about it, and now I'm like, oh, this sounds so cool, right? And I'm so like intrigued, so I'm looking forward to that. So one of the fantastic questions that we had coming into the chat in regards to like being able to break in through gaining certifications and not having to go back to college, certainly I'm just going to say, even for a lot of the folks that I've met that have certifications, they won't very frequently have a cybersecurity degree, or a master's in cybersecurity or anything like that. And again, there's been tons of people that I've met, and just like Avery here, no cybersecurity certification, right? No formal education in cybersecurity, right? Who have been building careers in it and who are fantastic about it. So it's certainly, I would say, compared to a lot of other careers that exist out there, cybersecurity is kind of like one of the last bastions where it's more about your grit and proving it with your expertise, and also a lot of the non-tangible skills. A huge thing that everyone talks about, and I can't beat the dead horse anymore, is the fact that it's communication. All the time when I'm selling a pen testing engagement to one of our like prospects or something like that and talking about it, a very frequent phrase that myself and my business partner Blake Shillem say is, it's like, hacking is the easy part. It's the communicating. What does this mean? And like, what are the reasonable like steps forward to having a security posture that's robust? You know what I mean? And not with just generic recommendations. Like, everyone knows the generic best practices recommendations. It's how do I take what my current situation is, right, and iteratively improve it, right, over time with the budget and resources that I have and with the skill set and the team that I have, So that's a really good clarification question there. So Avery, for yourself, and given that you're more recent into the domain of cybersecurity, but landed a fantastic gig, tell me about some of the maybe professional development resources, websites, content that you initially leveraged and were following that like best set you up for success.
Yeah, 100%. So what was life-changing for me was joining a mentorship program, because I didn't know where to go or have a path forward. I had started self-studying, and not even with the I guess I didn't even know if I was going to take that specific cert, because I knew I wanted to figure out exactly where I wanted to land, because there's so many different facets of the industry. But I got a CompTIA Security Plus book and was just ripping through that thing and just trying to learn all of it. But I didn't know where to go next, and I couldn't wait because I joined Cyversity's mentorship program, and I'll throw that link in the chat. So it's a 6-month mentorship program. It started on February 2nd and it just ended. And through that, there were so many incredible resources. And I was paired up with a one-on-one mentor. His name is Bob Henderson. He's oh gosh, he's been in the industry, I think like 45 years, but he was incredible. And he's actually the reason why, Christian, earlier my screen went blip when I was you were asking about my illustrations, but he's the reason why I started posting those, was because he was talking to me about how I was studying and just my process, etc. And I was like, yeah, well, I make these little drawings because I'm a tactile learner. And he's like, you should post those. And I kind of looked at him over Zoom and I was like, why? And he goes, I think those could be helpful to other people. So I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. So I didn't think they would really be useful to anyone else, but I'm like, sure, I'll put it out there if they think it could help them. And I guess it was. So my biggest thing is like, join a mentorship program and always give more than you take. I think that's the biggest thing for me, is like, if you give to others, as far as if you have information or resources, this is a community that at the end of the day is trying to make the world, like as cheesy as this sounds, trying to make the world like a safer place. That's the bottom line of this industry. So you need to give more than you take, and by adding to the community in whatever way you think that means. And so if it's silly little drawings like mine that for some reason are helpful to you guys, that's awesome. But join a mentorship community. There's tons of programs out there. I know there's a lot of them. There's a lot of DEI programs right now, but there's also, Travis, I'm sure you know a lot of the different programs for veterans as well. Some of the cybersecurity conferences I've been able to go to, specifically Hack Miami, I was at 2 weeks ago, and they had a ton of different, career paths and options for veterans. So, just get involved in a mentorship community, because you don't know shit, honestly, and then you don't. And the day that you think you do, then you're toast, because you need to keep learning. So yeah, get in a mentorship program for sure.
I even still refer to myself as a noob. And so I do always find it a little bit intriguing or interesting when someone will refer to themselves as an expert, put that hat on. It's like, that's a really big hat to wear, right?
No, Christian, the thought leader.
Or thought leader. Oh, don't get me started on my own like that. Oh no. But just how not just how wide cybersecurity is as a domain, right? And a map of all the different skill sets and types of expertise that you need to have, and, technology, administrative concepts, physical concepts, governance, risk and compliance, regulation, all that, but how deep it really gets too. You know what I mean? And so it's ever expanding in that regard. And I love your tip there about finding a mentor. One of the things that I always like to say through just any of the mentorship programs that I'll generally do with a lot of young folks is I say, hey, in life, find somebody who's like 2 to 5 years ahead of you in life, right? And seek their guidance and mentorship. You will not believe how much, if you just reach out to somebody, how much they'll tell you and talk, right? If you just be appreciative of their time, right? And it's really helpful. A lot of times they just want to help guide somebody avoid and avoid the pitfalls that they had encountered earlier in their career or in their life, right? Find a good group of your peers also, so that you can share in the camaraderie and working together, learning the same types of things in the trenches, so to speak. And then find people that you can mentor yourself, your mentees. To what Travis was just saying a little bit, earlier in regards to learning about Azure and all that kind of stuff. Travis, you did a couple of really fantastic Cyber Judo sessions teaching people about some of the security fundamentals of Microsoft 365 and Azure and whatnot. And that was really off the back of you recently learning about it. And I found myself that a lot of times when I'm like teaching a course on something, I got to refresh my knowledge and all that. And like that process of when you go to teach mentees,
Absolutely.
right, it's like a reinforcement. It makes you confident in your skill set and your knowledge, and really being able to like question yourself, like, okay, I know this does that, but why does it do that? And you're like, I can connect those dots now. So that's really great. That's really cool there. All of that noted, you also brought up veterans. And I think this is something that Travis can speak to quite well, because we've had a couple folks who have been veterans in the past that we've had as essentially like CSP. So there are like Army Career Skills Program individuals join us to learn about cybersecurity. Travis, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. Career Skills Program is the internship program that I used to intern with. At the time, it was Go Vanguard. It's really cool. It's part of a greater thing, which is called Skill Bridge, which is across the entire military. So, Navy, Marines, National Guard, anyone can do it. It's congressionally funded. So actually what happens is it doesn't cost anything for the company to do the internship for you, right? You're still being paid by the military. You still have your insurance through the military. So it's really a great win-win. It's one of the best programs available to service members, in my opinion, for transitioning into this civilian world, because Gotham got free labor from me, and I got some experience in how to do things without the uniform on, which was amazing. But in terms of the mentorship, like Avery mentioned, VetSec, VETSEC, it's an amazing group. They have a great Slack channel. It's free to join. You can get mentors on there. They're very, very active. There's tons of giveaways. If you need help with anything cybersecurity and you're a service member or a veteran, VetSec is worth checking out.
Awesome. Thank you for that note. Certainly, it's brought a lot of fantastic individuals our way, and being able to interact with them, help build their cybersecurity skills, and also learn a little bit from them.
Right.
So.
Another thing I'll mention is you said to reach out to people who are a couple of years ahead of you. About a year ago, when Michael Holman reached out to me the first time, he no-showed me on the first call.
Oh snap! That's really good.
Showed up for
Ghosted.
So
got me on blast.
So we've actually thinking about all that and being a no-show there by the way, Travis, thank you for such a good lead-in. So Michael, the no-show, I know you've done like 80 something interviews over the last 2 years and trying to break into cybersecurity, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so that being said, if you were going to reflect back on the past and how you would approach things differently, knowing what you know now, how would you approach your cybersecurity journey a little bit differently?
Oh, that's a good question.
Deep.
Yeah, it's deep. I think if we're talking strictly interviews, right, getting ready for those, I think what I would have done differently for the first 20 to 25, where I was super nervous, was do a lot more of the there's some of the discords out there. There's stuff like the security noob, things like that they have, where they'll go through and they'll do interview prep with you, like mock interviews, fake interviews, right? And I think a lot of that would have helped me get rid of those nerves in the beginning. It wasn't until like interview 26, 27-ish, where I was starting to feel comfortable with myself, where I was getting past interview 2, interview 3. Let's keep in mind here, 80 something interviews means I was pushed aside 79 times also, right? So I think grit, like you were talking about earlier, is huge. But the major takeaway is I didn't really learn to self-assess until around 25, 26, right? Like interview wise. And what I'm talking about is, at a certain point in time, we're all math guys and girls, right? There's a common denominator, right? And it's you. It's not the recruiter ghosting you. It's not, anything else. The fault simply lies with yourself, and you have to be able to look at it and to fix those for the next time. I think self-awareness is the rarest quality in the entire world. To be able to say, hey, I'm doing something wrong. I got to figure this out. Self-assess, get back on the drawing board and get at it. Right? It's so easy to point the finger, and I think that's what I would do differently. Interviews 1 through 25 I was like, this is not my fault. What this is whatever, and it was me. And as I got better, it became easier. So
How did you get better? Was it just the repetition, or did you have a moment where you started to really understand what those pieces of the common denominator was?
repetition was big. Coming from medical, I did have a ton of soft skills, but a lot of the technical gaps easily accessible. I mean, they could smell right through me, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of times, I'll be honest with you, not knowing a lot of the questions, the technical questions, things like that. There were times where I would fall into that trap of conjuring up answers. Don't do that. What you want to do is say, I'm so sorry, I don't know this off the top of my head, but if you're in a Zoom interview, what I found to work a lot was, I can share my screen and I can show you my thought process and how I would go about finding this, right? Because everybody uses Google Foo, right?
Mhm.
That's what we'll call it. But that's what I would say to myself. Hey, forgive yourself. Don't bullshit the answers. Be real.
I do interviews all the time. 100% to that. I will tell you what, I have 10 times more respect for somebody when I ask a question and I say, I don't know the answer to that, but let me tell you how I would go about finding the answer to that. That is the best way to turn around a situation where you feel like it's dire and your heart is like pounding in your chest, like, I just don't know. Turn it around to something that shows character and grit. Because I will tell you what, as challenging as an interview can be, a real job in cybersecurity is very demanding, and you will encounter those moments quite frequently where you don't know. And it's the moments where you're like, okay, I don't know this, but I'm going to go figure it out. That is going to be the most impressive and helpful to anyone who's looking to hire you, and also the rest of the team that you go to, hopefully interface and work with and all that kind of stuff. That being said, I saw somebody kind of note in the chat about Professor Messer and absolutely love his content. Like, it's a fantastic start there. And I want to just share out my screen really briefly. Let me see if I can actually do it here. So I'm going to allow it to share screen, and one moment here. I'm going to share out a very specific window. So on Enclave here, we have a really cool top free cybersecurity learning videos database that Blake and myself created for folks. If you go to this here, this is a categorized database by course topic and course level, and if it's on YouTube or whatever. If you guys are looking for free content, the reason why I'm kind of like segueing very briefly into this note here is because there's tons of Professor Messer content on here. And again, at the end of the day, we want to make sure that when people are picking up cybersecurity and you're learning it and you're trying to build that skill set, you do not have to shill out a bunch of money for it, right? You can do it by being passionate, being persistent, being to Holman's point, having like being introspective and being critical of how you come off to others, right? And leverage all the fantastic content that's out there. There are tons of really passionate folks that are, I mean, I want to say I put out Travis and myself in the same leagues as these other folks out there, but there are tons of really awesome people who create content out there for folks. There's one last element, which is interviews. So Holman, you have done tons and tons and tons and tons of interviews, right?
Yes.
And you were saying that, again, it's like 80 something. Outside of the bullshitting people, right, and the technical whoopsie daisies and that kind of stuff, is there, let's say, one more trick that you or tip that you would provide folks when prepping for an interview?
Yeah. Definitely listen to some relaxing music before. Your heart, I'm telling you, and if you're not a music person,
And yeah.
get to be one, right? You can't help, even now talking, I've done it so many times, but I still have that dun, 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 as we're talking to you guys. I think slow down. I have a tendency, because Christian knows this, everyone that I work with knows I am a rambler extraordinaire, as of not going on tangents, but I just love to speak. I love to talk. It's where I came from, medical, right? So slow down. Learn to slow down. Very difficult for me to learn in the very beginning, and I sometimes catch myself where I'm talking a little fast, even now. So I got to tell myself, slow down, be calm, because you don't want to appear too eager to who's interviewing you. That is a no-no.
Yeah, That's a fair point you make there about the eagerness. The eagerness, it is kind of something interesting just about human beings in general that like, and by the way, we're all eager, right? There's like being passionate, right? Like confidently passionate, and then there's like eager, which comes off like desperate, and somebody who is not confident, right? They're not confident because they're trying to grasp at anything possible, right? And so I think you really hit the nail on the head there with the term eager versus someone who's passionate. That being said, Avery, we had a really fantastic interview with you and your role as a a cybersecurity project coordinator with us. What are some of the tips that you would provide outside of what Holman already noted that really helped you?
So I would say listen more than you speak. And I used to work back in the lingerie days for this French jerk, but he had this saying, and this is the only good thing I took out of that job was, before you speak, twirl your tongue in your mouth 7 times. And I kid you not, to this day, I still do that because it makes me shut up and listen to what somebody else is saying because it seems like a lot of people here are the same way. But so guys, swirl your tongue in your mouth 7 times before you answer a question. I'm not kidding, but just listen more than you talk, and also ask questions, but not about what's the benefits, what's the salary. Well, really, is that all you care about? Don't you want to know more about the organization and how it was built? I mean, we're passionate about cybersecurity, so we should also be passionate about what the company we work for, their core values. So I would say listen more than you talk. And when you ask questions, don't make them about yourself because and can I say one thing about looking desperate? Christian,
Yeah,
a little side note. It makes me cringe when I see people complaining about on LinkedIn, complaining about how many interviews they've done, complaining that it's taken them so long to get a job. It's one of those things where you're putting that negative energy out there. LinkedIn, 100%. Christian, tell me if I'm wrong, but that's what got me this job, not LinkedIn, but I never would have met Christian. We never would have been in the same atmosphere if it wasn't for LinkedIn. But I would bet you $1,000 that Christian, if I had been posting along with my drawings, I've interviewed for these jobs, negative, you wouldn't have reached out. And so at the end of the day, just be positive and listen more than you talk. And also, another side note, the biggest thing I would say is don't engage with those negative posts, because you have to remember LinkedIn is a monetized platform. So if you go down that hole of only looking at negative posts about people job searching and please help me find a job, if that's all you look at, I almost had a nervous breakdown several times looking at that. And I was like, you know what? There's an algorithm. They're getting paid for this. They want you to engage with content. Stop engaging with the negativity. And then I didn't see it anymore. So just be careful what you post online. And I'm not talking about, inappropriate NSFW selfies. I'm talking about whining. Don't be a baby. Yeah. Work hard and don't be a baby.
I will say, so one of the things that really stood out when Blake and myself conducted our set of interviews with you was you came with really good questions about us knowing our organization. So I'm going to take a couple brief moments just to tell folks about hey, if you want to land a good interview, and previously I had on screen hey, here's some interview tips and that kind of stuff. Actually, here, I'll post it back up again for everybody. Very good resource here. So first and foremost, and by the way, for everybody who might be a little bit interested in where my bias or my particular angle comes from, because at the end of the day, not every organization is going to be like me looking for these exact 100% things. But I will tell you what, some of the best cybersecurity firms that really care about the mission of protecting not just organizations, but individuals in the world who are passionate and who want to have fun in the process, they're going to probably be looking for a lot of the same type of things because they're going to be a little bit more humanistic, right? Rather than maybe a larger corporate organization. So, our firm is a small but mighty team here, right? So, we're certainly less than 100 individuals, right? So things that I look for is a resume that actually stands out, right? Where like if I have like a little picture of somebody, right, and they highlight some of their skills on the side, right, and then they have a little bit of fun with their resume, where maybe they like in art, like rot 13 or something like that, like put a little cipher message like, hey, if you can read this, you should hire me. You know what I mean? Like little things like that are quirky and fun, right? And again, speak to somebody who's really enthusiastic. Another element is put in your resume the projects you're working on. There's been some individuals I've come across who are trying to build a career in cyber, and they'll purposely write a script that already kind of exists, right? One of the ones that was really cool to me was it was called Hash Kitty, right? Somebody made a script, right? That was just like Hashcat, right? But it was like really like fundamental, very basic and whatnot. And they wrote it and they posted it. I was like, that's really cool. And I took the time to actually look at that person's code, give them feedback and that kind of stuff because I loved it, right? And I was like, oh, hey, yeah, you can improve it this way and all that. And I was like, awesome job. So you want to make your resume stand out, set up a GitHub, right? Set up a couple GitHub projects, right? Share content. Avery created tons of fantastic content. It jumped right out off the page, right? And it was interesting, right? Hallman was doing, he is the LinkedIn, cybersecurity guy who asks a new cybersecurity question every day for, every day, every week, every month, every year, every decade type of guy, right? By the way, I'm going to hold you to that, Mr. Hallman. You're going to do that for the rest of your life, right? But anyways, so those are some things that just kind of jump out pre-interview. Interview-wise, well, some things that are really, really helpful is, number one, showing up on time. Or showing up actually a couple minutes early. The amount of interviews that I have done where either people show up late or they show up completely unprepared, or they don't show up at all. It's really unfortunate. It's like, I'm trying to find somebody, right? I want to hire somebody. Come on, right? I'm giving you my time, and you don't show up or something like that. So that's really unfortunate. Once you show up, right, looking professional, looking the part. I know some of these things might be for a lot of people like a duh. For some reason, there's a lot of times where I interact with people and they're still dressed in their pajamas and that kind of stuff, right? Hey, might be cool once you already landed the gig, but when you're probably doing an interview, it doesn't necessarily show that you care as much, perhaps, right? Have to be really, to Holman's point, introspective there. And then I would say another element that really, really is awesome that I love is, again, like I was noting, Avery asked questions of my firm, right? She took the time to do probably anywhere from 5 to 30 minutes of research by looking at our website, understanding our services, understanding what our brand was about, what our differentiators were, right? And everything about us. So when she came to the table and she was speaking to us and answering questions, she was answering in a format and in a perspective that she knew was native to us, right? It made sense to us, right? She wasn't speaking to us as if we were some large corporate giant, right? Because she knew we were a smaller team, because it was fairly evident, She could speak to what values were important to us because she had already read it in our mission statement on our company site. And then she would ask questions that were really, I would say, thought-provoking, where it was like, why do we do that at our organization? Or what are our goals for that particular thing? It's like, that's a really good question. We need more people asking questions like that so we can work on finding the answers together, right? So again, if you guys are looking for any other additional tips, they're down in our URL here that's posted on screen. So that being all considered, Travis, you and I find ourselves as, to Avery was noting, the cybersecurity thought leaders, right? Being in that domain, there's this ever-evolving nature of cybersecurity resources and content. And one of the things that is becoming actually a little bit more pernicious, unfortunately, and I think folks were actually talking about it in the chat a little bit earlier. Let me pull it up here. It was Allison who brought up Chat GPT. So now everybody and their grandma is using Chat GPT to say, hey, tell me the top 10 cybersecurity tools, right? they get a prompt or they get the output based on their prompt from ChatGPT, and then they post it to LinkedIn, right? So now there's more noise that's being propagated by people who really don't know what they're talking about. They don't really hire other individuals in cybersecurity, right? They don't really have a career set in cybersecurity. They just kind of just post about it all the time. How for new people getting started in cybersecurity, there's all this over information. You're always getting overloaded. How do people filter through the noise? What are the best like ways to spot like crappy, low quality tips and tricks and information and really find good gems?
Yeah, that's a great point. I actually saw one a couple hours ago. It was the top 10 port scanners, and the number 3 one was Burp Suite. I'm like, how the hell do you use Burp Suite to do that? But I had a ton of interactions on it. But no, you're totally right there. And when people start to want to transition into cybersecurity, a lot of times when they reach out, they'll be open to anything, right? They'll be like, hey, I'm looking for a network security, cloud security, app security, mobile pen testing, or GRC role. Okay. I mean, that's a lot of stuff there, man. So you need to first understand what's your baseline, right? Get an understanding of what is cybersecurity, right? Not just the sexy part of pen testing or being in the SOC or anything like that, but understand what organizations are they trying to do and what are the actual attacks and threats that they're defending against, right? Get yourself a baseline. From there, you'll be able to identify what areas in cybersecurity you are most passionate about. It doesn't matter if you'll make more money as a cloud security architect than you will as a SOC. It doesn't matter. You're not going to be good at it if you're not passionate about it. Right? You will very rapidly hit the point where it will take so much time and effort to maintain, to be current, and to get to that next level beyond just entry, beyond an intermediate skill set, that if it's not something that you love to do, it's not going to be the path, right? So figure out what part of this whole thing that you really want to be into. Then you can start honing in on some of the people who are working in that industry, who are actually doing those things, especially following firms that are putting out content for the community. They do a lot of open source things that are reputable, like not just obviously I'm going to pump for Cyber Judo and Gotham, but there are other great firms like Black Hills. They put out a ton of great stuff. They're a really good one to follow. TCM Security, they put out a lot of really great content on YouTube for free, as well as their courses. Those are the ones that you'll want to be focusing a little bit more to. Individual, influencers, if you will, are great, but the ones who are posting, a list of 100 things with no content, LinkedIn is a numbers game, and sometimes I'm guilty of it too. People get most impressions on the things that people just want to press the repost button on. So if it's a really pretty graphic, people love to repost that thing.
Yeah.
If it's got 4 paragraphs of really thoughtful writing, you're not going to have as many impressions as a pretty picture, and it's a shame. But those are the ones that you want to go through. You want to really read those. You want to read the context behind it, not just the thing that looks cool to post and is going to make you look like you know a lot of stuff.
I like that note. I would also say following the people who are creating the source content. There's a lot of times it's really, really interesting. So there's this feature in LinkedIn that I see a lot of people suspiciously not use, which is the mention function, right? And they'll take someone else's like tool or their topic or their post, right? And they'll post the same thing, and then they'll put down below, right at the end, right? Credit to this person, right? And they don't even use the mention function there. So that person doesn't even get the, they didn't get the kudos for it, right? It's just like, hey, that's the back of the book that nobody actually reads to read the credits there. No, or when you're in the movie theater, nobody stays to read the credits. Just watch the movie. It's my movie, right? And that's kind of unfortunate. I would say that at the end of the day, the individuals that are actually creating the unique, original content, those are the best people to follow. Not just because they're going to be like you're now like following like the latest and greatest and bleeding edge and the real quote unquote thought leaders, but those are likely the individuals that like when you go to reach out to them, like, hey, I got a real head scratcher for you. I got this question, right? And I did a bit of research on it, and I really value your opinion. I've seen a lot of your work. I wanted to get your thoughts on this thing, right? If you do that type of stuff, right, those are going to be the types of individuals who are more likely to follow up and reach out and that kind of stuff. And better yet, when you ask those individuals questions, and I've had this quite a few times in the past with, I think, like, folks like, our boy Terry here in the chat, and also Michael Hallman. Someone asked me like a set of questions, and LinkedIn is filled with a lot of messaging noise. It is filled with a great ton of messaging noise. But again, there's some really great folks, like, again, Terry and Mike and all that kind of stuff. And they'll reach out and they'll have a question. And when I get the moment to get to it, I'll like write like a really thorough response. And then later, what they'll do is they'll post it to LinkedIn, right? They're like, hey, I asked this question of Christian or Travis, right? And they responded with this. I wanted to share this insight with everybody else. And that's really cool because it then took the moment of like that interpersonal mentorship with somebody, right? And then they took it and it made actually my life or Travis's life or someone else's life a little bit easier because they spread it out with the rest of the world, their own little enclave, their own little community. And now that group knows. They don't have to ask that same question, right? Or they can ask a variation based off of that and like, have a discussion down in the chat. You know what I mean? Like real unique engagement type of stuff. So
and it really does help everyone because a lot of the content that at least you and I make, Christian, it's based on those millions of questions that we get, the ones that are the most repetitive. Right. I know the pages I put together for Cyber Judo and all that, they're usually stemmed off of the answer of the questions that people are asking me week after week after week on LinkedIn. So yeah, that's a really great point to, when you do reach out to a mentor, if you get some good, valuable knowledge, there's nothing, it's not going to help you to hoard that.
Yeah. In a lot of the content that we covered in the past, and I think one of the previous notes that I had for everybody was, hey, it's the hacking is the easy part. It's the communicating that's the more challenging, right? And so I would definitely say, especially for people who are starting out in cybersecurity or who are lighter on the technical skills, like you're going to have to build technical skills in most cases of cybersecurity in one degree or another, right? Or at least be able to understand the lexicon and some of the fundamental concepts fairly well. If you're like, let's say, a salesperson, right? Or you're some level of a high level, governance risk compliance person, all of that. This way you can kind of like, connect the dots and tie everything together, right? Understand like the big picture, right? I think that's still really important. But when you have less technical skills, really, really leverage those soft skills, right? And take those and supercharge those all of the way, right? And this pre-engagement pen testing considerations like guide that we created and we turned it into a Cyber Judo session. This is really like one of those fundamental things where you don't have to be a pen tester. Hell, you don't even need to be a technical person, right, to read this and get a lot of thought-provoking content out of it, an insight of how to communicate as if you're in the perspective of somebody on the other side, right? Understanding what's the personality type you're working with, understanding what does that individual want and how you can help fulfill their particular needs. How can you effectively obtain their trust, right? And secure their trust, right? Those are all elements that don't require you to be technically adept. Those are all elements that if you feel like you're a pretty charismatic person and good at communicating, supercharge that, leverage that, use that to your advantage, right? Avery is someone who conventionally has a lighter technical skill set, right? But at the end of the day, as somebody who's doing cybersecurity project coordination, the most important element is fitting the puzzle pieces together of what's happening, when it's happening, managing customer expectations, right? And then collaborating, communicating with engineers, governance risk analysts, all that kind of stuff, right? Or governance risk compliance analysts, all that kind of stuff, right? So just as much as possible, even if you think you're good at your soft skills, really take the opportunity to take it to the next level there. So I know we're coming just about at time. Wow. Time has passed quite quickly here. I do want to hit on one last element, which is Avery, you were initially talking a little bit about, getting started in cybersecurity all the way from your initial background in education, right? So far in your career path and also kind of what you see projecting into the future, what are you so far finding most rewarding about your work in cybersecurity, and what are you looking forward to doing the most?
The most rewarding, I would say, is I get to work with and I'm not just plugging you because you're my boss and because you guys are my coworkers, but no, but seriously, that you get to work with a group of like-minded, kind of quirky, weird people, and it's really awesome to kind of work with people who you feel like understand you, and you're all working towards a common goal. And I would say that's the most rewarding part. And also on the flip side of that is that even though I am light on my technical skills and I am doing the coordination part, I still get to like read and review the really interesting reports, and I get to pick up all those little interesting tidbits throughout the day and put them all together and understanding what's going on and fitting that puzzle together. So it's being interested and curious in the content that I just get to like soak up throughout the day because it's so exciting and interesting to me, but also the people I get to work with. And I had this ta-da moment when I went to B-Sides in Tampa. That's another thing. Go to conferences, volunteer at them. That's where you can really kind of like get excited and get inspired. And I remember going there and being like, these are my people. So I would say going forward, the thing I'm most excited about is, I've been working in the cybersecurity industry for 5 weeks now. And I'll say, the best part is like every job that you have, you're going to have days that are super stressful and awful. You're just going to have like a bad day at work. But when you find a job that at the end of the day, you're like, hell yeah, all of that was worth it because I did something that mattered. That's what I'm excited about, is get to spend the rest of my career doing that. So I guess that would be my answer.
Wow, I really love that. Hallman, what's your take? What's most rewarding and what are you looking forward to?
Oh gosh, I love the fact that I get to break things and not go to jail. My favorite thing. I'm much like you, a tinker at heart, right? So I absolutely love that. The camaraderie, like Avery said, I'll steal her bit. I think our team is super tight knit, and I think it's a great place, and it's been amazing for the last 3 months. So it's been an awesome ride, and I can't wait to grow in the future and learn more skill sets with you guys, such as mobile from Shane, things of that nature. But yeah, that's the most rewarding part right now, I think, is the camaraderie, and I like being able to break stuff and not get in trouble. It's nice.
And get paid for it.
I get paid for it. But special shout out, and I'll go ahead and throw Travis under the bus right now. But he knows, like a year and a half ago when I reached out for mentorship from him. Without him, without you, Christian, I don't think I'd be here today with where I'm at. So I appreciate you both very much.
Thank you. We certainly love you guys as well, and have you guys on the team and collaborating with you guys through the Cyber Judo sessions. By the way, I'm just going to note for everyone else who is watching here, again, we've been talking a lot about networking and outreach. Building your network is one of the fastest ways to supercharge your career growth, and joining sessions with other cybersecurity individuals that are out there who are interactive, just like these types of formats, and who are engaged, right? Those are going to be the types of individuals that are going to be more likely to help mentor you, help build your skill set, give you tips and tricks, and maybe hire you guys too and all that. At the end of the day, that's kind of what it's all about, is investing in one another, putting good into the world in the spirit and mission of protecting not just organizations, but individuals from malicious actors. That all being noted, Avery, I didn't know that we were quirky here. Okay, maybe it's something
really?
about
Mr. Satin vest with the coattails. Okay?
I was about to say something about the pompadour and the mustachio and the whole Renaissance outfit type of deal, where his shirt is for some reason matching his like curtains. I really love the Red Team that much, and Travis and myself, we color coded our outfits before this. I just want to let everybody know.
We do it every day.
So really appreciate everyone joining us tonight. We're going to have more fantastic sessions where we provide insight just like this in the near future. So keep following us on LinkedIn, both with Cyber Judo, Enclave, Travis, myself, Michael Hallman, Avery, and the rest of the Cyber Judo team. And the next fantastic session that we're going to be having coming up is talking about DevSecOps and security in the software development lifecycle. We're looking forward to it. We'll talk to you guys next Wednesday at 9 p.m. Have a great night, team. Bye now.
Bye, guys.
Yeah.